Personally, I've never been the hugest fan of ARPGs, or action role-playing games as a genre. I of course played Diablo 2 in its heyday, and quite a bit of Diablo 3 on launch, but I've always been a bigger fan of the isometric RPGs like Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment, ones that gave you time to breathe, to soak up the world around you, ones where choices, especially in dialogue, mattered. There are often consequences to your actions beyond the simple destruction of your enemy beneath thy blade or spell. So it's funny that, upon playing Magic Legends for the first time, I spotted some dialogue trees during the gameplay. I use the word tree lightly. They appeared to have either one branch to propel exposition or mission information as you click through, or a select handful of options to learn about the immediate environment in the overworld sections. You know the ones, the typical RPG mainstays of tell me about X, tell me about your father, tell me about the colour of the hairs around your arsehole, that kind of thing. And I knew coming into Legends that it was an action RPG, very much in the vein of Diablo or Torchlight, so I didn't expect branching dialogues or quests changing upon said dialogue, but it did make me stop and ask the question, why is this even here? If it doesn't affect anything, why is this in the game? I recently got to play an hour of Legends during a press event, so thank you to Cryptic for inviting me. It was a little bit stilted, and typically the hand-holding thing, difficulty level was turned down, and I was guided into particular missions with no options to record my own footage. This is less me criticising the game and the developer, and more simply a symptom of press events, right? I'd also hasten to point out that I don't think this indicates that they are not proud of what they have to show, as the open beta launches very soon, on March 23rd. For those of you who don't know, Magic Legends is a free-to-play hack and cast, their words not mine, action RPG set in the world and based upon the mechanics of Wizards of the Coast's card game Magic the Gathering. If you don't know what Magic the Gathering is, it's the card game, right? It's the card game. You play the part of a planeswalker, casting spells and summoning creatures to do battle across multiple of the game's iconic planes. You'll collect spells to add to the spellbook, which I wanted to show some B-roll of, but they didn't send me any, so I had to rip it out of a dev diary. And from this spellbook, you build custom decks. In-game, the spells available to you from your deck that you've loaded will randomly appear in your bar below the screen here. This is to simulate the drawing of cards in a card game, I guess. And it's pretty cool. You utilize mana of varying colours, which regenerate over time. There's no land system, so you can't brick by drawing no lands or flood by drawing too many. Instead, your split of colours is determined by the split of spells in your deck, and an algorithmic thing. At time of release, you won't have any way to play a variant of Manaless Dredge, or play too fewer lands and complain you don't draw enough. If you are a degenerate, you will have to get your fix another way. The basic gameplay loop is satisfying, the spells and summons filling up the screen and ripping down enemy health bars in explosive and vibrant ways that should scratch any hack and slash enthusiast itch, even if only for a moment. There are loot drops all over the place of varying currencies, spell pages, item drops, spell drops. It's a literal bombardment of the typical RPG nonsense that we've come to expect from this genre and this style of game, and it helps to fulfill that primal urge to collect and progress. In this relatively early build, everything that was unlocked could be unlocked, right? So I wasn't leveling up really or getting anything extra or new, but I could still feel that bit in the back of my mind thinking, oh, I picked up these bits and these dinglings and these glowy things getting sucked into my character. All the noises and everything, it's all designed to make you feel good. And that was there. In short, it felt nice, but in terms of judging the gameplay fully, the press event didn't really allow for this. It was set to super easy mode, I couldn't take any damage really, and the central loop felt nice, but I can't comment on the difficulty or repetitiveness due to the lack of time and lack of difficulty. And although we were briefly shown the rather streamlined and simplified progression systems of leveling up to unlock perks and customizable gear, without extended time with the game, I just can't comment on how fun all of that is, or how restricted it is in terms of funneling you into the money system. There are some very fun mechanics. Being able to channel extra mana into spells to make them more powerful, having equipment or perks that then fire out goblin grenades and goblin explosives as you channel was wicked. There's an equipment that randomly summons a dragon as you cast spells. The RNG chance of being able to summon that dragon is affected by the number of spells in your deck, if I remember correctly. It feels like the variety of gameplay options, build paths, and synergies that you can put together via the gear system, the perk feat system as you level up your character, and then your spellbook, the most customizable bit, is incredibly extensive. I mean, deck building alone, alongside the added other RNG elements, will make the game rich in depth in a way that other action RPGs don't really normally touch upon. I'm not saying it's going to be deeper than your average Divinity, Original Sin or whatever, but I'm saying that it's a unique angle. The fact that it actually captures the idea of building a deck from cards is really cool. I have to hand it to them. But does it look like Magic? Well, we get to see Zendikar and Innistrad in our limited time with the game, and we're even pitted up against Noyan Dar as a mission boss on the Zendikar map. In Innistrad, we're only going to Gavony. This is obvious. It means that they can go to other parts of Innistrad in later content. So it's cool that they aren't just using up planes now to, you know, I don't know, burn through the resources available to them. Innistrad has, you know, multiple regions they could explore in different expansions or content patches. On Zendikar, we find that Hedrons are the main mission objective. They're floating around, powering like force fields, and you have to attack them and turn them off to access the next area, which honestly just feels like skinned objective for an action RPG 101. So yeah, okay. The Zendikar goblins in the environment look different to the Dominaria goblins that I was summoning from my spell book. There is talk of having skins available for your spells, so you can flavour, kind of like different arts in Magic, I guess, flavour the goblins, for example, that you summon. I think showing regional or planar differences is a nice touch that feels Magic. Although there is one of the problems rearing its head in this map, I'm a little lost as to why these little things are called merfolk drakes, as opposed to, I don't know, any of the classic flying blue creatures. Wind drake, anyone? Just one example of many missed opportunities that makes me wonder how many of the team at Cryptic I'm actually familiar with the source material. And this is one of my biggest gripes with the game so far, coming in from a super enfranchised Magic nerd perspective. Spells are dropped and added to your spellbook. You can summon any enemy that you fight, I've been told. A Pokemon-esque gotta catch 'em all collectathon is wicked, and I like and enjoy the idea of that, and it fits with a card game as its inspiration. But, and there is a but, I saw literally perhaps dozens of spells in my single hour with the game, and there's over 158 launch. But I would haphazardly guess that of the spells I saw, only 40% of them were recognisable spells from Magic. I even asked to clarify, and Stephen Ricosa, who was sat with me during my time, proudly explained some of these spells were the ones that they had made. Which begs the question, why is this even a Magic game in the first place then, if you're going to just make up your own shit? Why are we utilising a license for a card game where you literally collect, compile and cast spells taken from 20,000 unique Magic cards at time of writing, if we're just going to make up our own generic stuff? Look, it might seem a little bit nitpicky, but I don't want to fight against generic Drake number 3. I can do that in any number of other action RPGs. I want to play against Magic Drake number 3, aka the Wind Drake. And there is a huge focus in this game, by the way, of summoning creatures. While spell-based DPS is available, you can play a burn deck in essence. Summoning creatures to both protect your own life total and put damage on the opponent or enemies is massive. But some of these summons, like the Light Piercer Angel, are unique to this game. And whilst I get that perhaps the development team and their creatives wanted to make new and exciting stuff for the game, but taking iconic stuff like Baneslayer Angel or Serra Angel or any of the angels in Magic and making it even more generic is an absolute blunder. You have so much iconic stuff and so many resources available to you if you're working directly with wizards. Why are you making me play with generic Bow Archer number 4? And then we have the art assets. This is my biggest problem. And if you thought I was nitpicking about the Drakes, this might drive home the issue. Some of the creatures, like a Green Warden of Marassa, only vaguely look like a Green Warden. I only really noticed it was a Green Warden because of the tooltip and the name at the top of the screen during the gameplay. Now, that can be forgiven. Sometimes translating 2D art, especially stylized stuff that you sometimes get in Magic, to 3D models is very, very hard to get right. And also during the frantic, combat that I was in, I might not be getting a good look at it. Side by side, it might look a lot better. But then, when looking through the spellbook, not only was I met with a plethora of what I would hope to be placeholder names that weren't Magic cards, except for their association with generic fantasy cliches, I also found a sea of stylized art assets that meant absolutely nothing to me on first glance. They were simple visual noise. As an aside, and this is a very personal thing to me, I sometimes struggle to pick up games like RPGs that bombard you with item drops and upticks and level ups and abilities. Torchlight 3, for example, was put onto Game Pass recently, and after playing an hour or so of that, I felt a little overwhelmed, even just with the plethora of items that I was just picking up in my inventory that all kind of looked the same to me. And numbers. I can tell one number is bigger than another, right? That's basically the only way to play that game for me. But again, numbers kind of just all blur together for me as well. This is very much a me problem and not the game, but it's something where I thought if I was coming to a Magic-themed RPG, it wouldn't be much of an issue. As a Magic player, I assumed my vast experience and knowledge of Magic would help me to navigate this spellbook. That I would be able to know, for example, what a Goblin Piker is and what it does relative to a Shivan Dragon. But there was not one piece of Magic's iconic art in sight. Not one single piece, which is fucking wild. I asked if they would share art assets with Wizards directly eventually, and they said they might be a possibility in the future. What? I don't necessarily blame Cryptic for this, right? This is not me pointing the finger at the development team and being like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm more wondering how this came about. Like, who at a higher level, whether it be with Cryptic or Wizards, decided not to use the art assets for Magic? If you are utilising an IP, an intellectual property like Magic the Gathering, or Warhammer to a lesser extent as well factors into this, which both have strong visual identities, literal decades worth of material and content and iconic game pieces, as well as some of, if not the best, art in all of fantasy fiction and tabletop gaming, why the fuck would you not utilise that in your game? Why would you not look to make the tie-in stronger? To bring emotional connections and bonds across from the main game to your game? Like, here's an aside again, away from the preview that's more about me, but we all know how much I love Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, or Thraben Inspector, or Restoration Age, or Flickerus, these cards that I love playing with. And these things might show up in this game, but their art would be unrecognisable to me because the art style isn't even parallel, let alone it actually being the OG art. I even joked upon realising this, saying that the Shivan Dragon doesn't look like a Shivan Dragon. But then again, I assume they would be looking to attract newer players to this, as well as people who already play Magic, so perhaps I'm being too harsh. Stephen told me that the designs were to make things easy to recognise in your hand during the gameplay. My mind immediately shot to a hand of Magic cards and how easily the art can be told apart. Now I know a turn-based card game is different to an action RPG, but part of me thinks that Magic might have been getting this right over its decades-long lifespan, and perhaps that can be borrowed for this game about drawing spells and casting them. They said they hoped it would attract existing Magic players, but I have to ask, what is the tie-in for? There are familiar places. You go to Gavany on Innistrad and places on Zendikar and Dominaria, for example, and credit where credit is due, Gavany looked, I will go as far as to say fantastic. Nothing too unique or new, but the European Gothic look was on point. It had wet puddles, it felt a bit dank, and the Tesla-inspired machinery of the riggers and the mad scientist all felt appropriate and on theme. Gavany evoked Innistrad. Zendikar, not so much. It felt generic. There were some iconic hedrons and some felled statue in the background of one bridge moment that I didn't recognise at all, and the development team couldn't tell me what it was either, so it might have just been a generic fallen statue of a king. Some familiar MTG art assets rotating through my hand or similar might just serve to tile this together and make it feel less generic fantasy. The boss of the Zendikar level is Noyandar, and I was told you'd meet other characters like Ralzarik and Geralf and so on, which is all well and good. But generic Fishman or Lightning Mage doesn't really tickle my Magic-attuned pickle. Like, it relies too heavily on the generic side of Magic's identity and names to a lesser extent during the frantic concoction of battle. Goblins and Saplings and generic elementals are all good, but I asked, would we see Eldrazi or Phyrexians? Can I summon a Reality Smasher or a Phyrexian Obliterator? The answer was no. Not at launch. But there would be a big-named, big-bad character in the game that they couldn't tell me who at present time. My money is on Bolas, and this will be kind of cool, seeing a big 3D Bolas like a raid boss style thing, where you and 3 friends, or 2 friends, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 player, can get into a fight with it. That would be wicked, but ultimately I was left feeling a little bit like the game is a little bit hollow on the Magic front. But I guess if this was an over-the-shoulder action game with no skill trees or spells to collect, the omission of iconic Magic art and sparing use of iconic Magic card names would feel less jarring. But this game has a spell system, and the deck building, the randomized hand, the abilities and mana all feel very much in tune with what Magic is about at a fundamental level, but from a flavour theme and existing knowledge of Magic perspective coming in as a player, the game is severely lacking at this point. As a free-to-play game, there is a progression and monetization system. I just don't know how purposefully predatory it will be to push people towards spending money, because whilst we were shown currency during the preview, and a brokerage where free-to-players can exchange their free-to-play currency they've accrued for bought ones from other people, none of that matters until you've spent time with the progression system. It's almost impossible to comment on it at this time. So it all begs the question, why is this a Magic tie-in? Without the famous and truly iconic art of the card names and effects, why is this not just a generic hack and castathon with a gimmick of collectible spells and cards? Why should Magic players care about this? Much like the dialogue trees that create some illusion of engagement, but ultimately don't do anything, why is it there? If the gameplay loop is fun enough, it will tick a box for some players. Fan service, references, and fully 3D renderings of fan favourite characters. I just hope Wizards plays a bit more ball with Cryptic as time goes on. The lack of actual factual Shivan Dragon art in the spellbook is frankly mad. And the fact that we have no Phyrexians or Eldrazi to start it off with, I mean, it gives us something along the line, but why should I care initially? I hope you found this video useful and interesting. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I don't often do video game preview stuff. I always wanted to do more of this sort of thing, so maybe I will do more in future if this is enjoyable. If you're new here and you like Magic the Gathering, Warhammer, Dungeons & Dragons, or a little bit of variety content, hit the subscribe button. It's mainly Magic, but I'm branching out a little bit. And I would love to hear what you think as well. Are you excited? Are you more hyped than before? Because let's be real, the reveal trailer and the early previews kind of sucked. Are you going to install and play this on March 23rd? I know I'm going to, because I'm a fucking sucker for Magic stuff. But I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.